Good day and welcome back to another DBZ Dokkan Metal video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the Battle-Hardened Formidable Foes event and basically how you can beat the event and obviously take on the stage. It's a really tough stage. These Battle-Hardened victory stages or fight stages are actually really tough. I'm not gonna lie, they hit really hard. So there are 4 fights in total, each has 2 phases. The first phase, we take on Jackie Chun, who will become Jackie Chun Max Power, obviously being Master Roshi's alter ego. He has a base normal of 1,000,000, and he supers for 2.5 and then 3.4 million respectively in each phase. He nullifies super attack ceiling, he's immune to stunning in his second form, and he seals you in his base state. Now 3.4 million is a lot, 2.5 is a lot, million attack normals is a lot. It's a very tough stage. It's like red zone level difficulty. It's very tough, and there's not a lot of build up, so I'm going to want to bring a team that's very strong out the gate. The mitigating factor is that these units are not super tanky. A lot of them have around 100 to 150 million health. They don't have super high damage reduction like they have. It's not super high. And they don't have super high defense. So they don't necessarily hit, they hit hard, but they don't necessarily hit unbelievably hard and then can't take any damage. They can take some damage, and you can actually get rid of them relatively simply. So from that aspect, you do at least have some control over the fights. So you have Jackie Chun Max Power. Obviously, we're going to be taking on the stage with a USS team. USS team is definitely, for me, one of the better teams for the construct of all 4 of these fights. Largely because they are able to stay quite dominant. They start out very strong. They don't have a huge amount of ramp up time. You have the revives when you get in trouble. You have some very good active skills. In general, you just have a very good basis for developing your team and for building off of, that allows you to kind of handle the event with medium level difficulty. So from that aspect, I would say definitely for me, this team feels like it's one of the better choices. Obviously, there are going to be quite a few meta teams that are going to function pretty well here, but you have to be very careful because, like I said, the normals hit very hard. 1,000,000 for a normal is very difficult. It's not something that's incredibly easy to handle. And it doesn't get any better. Like all 4 fights, I would say, are of relatively similar difficulty, but I would definitely say the last 2 fights are definitely more difficult than the first. So you take on Jackie Chun Max Power. Once you've beat him, you can then take on Tien. So we move on to Tien. Tien, 2.2 million, so less technically in supers, but he can fire 2 of them per turn. So I guess that makes it easier. So a little bit less on the super, but you have a really strong ability to fire multiple supers per turn. Obviously that is something that is not ideal to handle. And then you have the strength Tien second phase. There you can have a normal of 1.2 mil. Very, very tough to go through. But also 3.6 million in super, so definitely a big step up. What you have to be very careful of with Tien is his ramp up. So when Tien falls below 50% health, he will then deal 50% more attack, or you'll gain 50% more attack damage. This is obviously very difficult to handle, and so I would highly suggest that you make sure that you are aware of when this change is going to occur. Don't be afraid to use an item. It's not a huge problem, but definitely something I would suggest, as it's probably going to give you a good foundation towards being able to handle the increased heat from Tien's change, his health change, and then obviously his increase in attack, which can be very, very, very overwhelming. Remember, 50% up from him will make his normals 1.8 million. It'll make his supers almost, well, around about 5 million. It's a very dangerous time to be like up. It's why also I quite like the USS team, because it's a team that has very heavy levels of evasion, and I think that level of evasion is very crucial towards construct of the team in mitigating damage. So like evasion, what makes it so good is it fully mitigates the damage, so you have no risk of taking damage at all. This is obviously very, very clutch, very crucial, because you're not taking chip damage, you're not having reduction to your damage, you're not having drop off. You are just taking on, zero damage. Obviously, from the strength TN side, I would highly suggest you consider having AGL units or units with guard. But I actually found the first phase to be more alarming than the second phase, purely because of those double supers. Double super attacks, obviously not great, not super cool. They cause issues, they give problems, and yeah, ultimately, it's not great to deal with. So double supers definitely are, for me, something that's harder and less enjoyable to work with, and can cause more issues than people think, basically. Having multiple units that can potentially take supers is obviously always harder than potentially having non-multiple units that take supers. Basically, it's just always a more difficult situation to be in. It's not as pleasant to deal with. It is hard to handle. So that covers TN, obviously. Then we have to look at the next one, which is against Demon King Piccolo. And here, I would say things take another step up. So each fight is moderately more difficult than the last. But obviously, I would say Demon King Piccolo is definitely, for me, was a significant step up, mainly in terms of health. So up until now, you've mainly been dealing with units that have 100 million in terms of health, 100 or so million. Piccolo, he has 120 and then 150 million health. It's a very big step up. It's 20-50% more. And the reason why is because obviously he's tankier, which means you're dealing with his big attack stats longer. So base form, Demon King Piccolo Elder, you can seal, which does make life a bit easier, but he's hitting for 3.4 million. So he's definitely hitting hard right out the gate. He also raises his defense in one turn, which obviously is helpful to him to mitigate damage, but it is just something you have to deal with. The second form is where things get really, really interesting. Immune to sealing, immune to stunning, and the big one is that he increases his attack with each turn that passes, and his defense goes down with each attack received. So over time, if you do multiple attacks, you can reduce his defense, giving you an easier time to taking him out. But obviously the juxtaposition is that the longer you take, the more attacks you do to lower the defense, the higher his attack stat is actually going to go. So while he's getting stronger offensively, he's also getting weaker defensively, and you need to play around that. Obviously trying to spike damage as much as possible, do as many attacks in a turn as possible, just try to really trigger that lack of defense and to ultimately reduce what you can. Although I wouldn't say reducing defense matters holistically hugely. It helps, but it's more important to beat him before his attack really ramps up to being insane. Obviously, going back to the team build, in this situation, we have a very strong team in terms of evasion. We have a strength UI Goku, we have an AGL MUI Goku, we have and those two are obviously our big evasion units. But strength MUI Goku needs to evade here, otherwise you are going to be sold up the river, because AGL Demon King Piccolo is going to send him back to a completely different stratosphere, basically, if he hits him with a super or a normal or anything like that. So definitely items do help here. What I will say is, generally, I think, because of how it's constructed, and because you have to start really strong, I think this one's not too bad because you have really strong units like the Int Vegeta and the Android 17, at least on USS. So that helps you with the Demon King Piccolo Junior stage, and then you can get some really strong tech units. Like for those of you who may have tech LR Vegito, obviously that's a huge one that makes a massive difference to how you perform because of his overall strength and his ability to deal damage and be defensively sound and all that sort of stuff. So there is like a huge incentive towards that. But yeah, I would say overall, realistically, honestly, I would say it is still pretty tough to handle Cell to handle Demon King Piccolo Elder. Well, I guess it's Cell, cells. But yeah, it's definitely difficult to handle him if you don't get through him quickly. He starts to become very, very not fun, no bueno to deal with. So yeah, Demon King Piccolo Elder, obviously very difficult. Dokkan skill does help dealing damage, healing up. There are currently no missions for these events, so there's no category missions, there's no support item missions, there's no nothing like that. And I think with good reason, because at this point there are only a couple of teams that can take these on. Movie bosses, planetary destruction, uncontrollable power, Martian Boo, Earth protecting heroes probably. That's really probably about it. USS, of course. So yeah, I think it is just difficult to handle. Finally, we move on to the Piccolo stage. So Piccolo, similar health levels to Demon King Piccolo, in fact almost identical stats as well. So it's almost a repeat fight, except for the supers hitting slightly harder. So Piccolo Jr., the first phase, he hits slightly harder than the first phase for Demon Piccolo Elder. He also recovers HP, which is pretty gnarly. And then you obviously have the Giant Form. Giant Form is very interesting. So Giant Form hits for 4.2. Which is obviously about the same as Demon King Piccolo, but the Giant Form recovers HP, and also basically can lower your defense quite substantially. So now you have to kind of take him out really quickly, and the way to kind of diminish him is by attacking him. His attack actually goes down with each attack that he's received. So if you can hit him with multiple attacks right off the bat and kind of dish out damage to him, I think you can then actually have a bit of luck here, because at that point what you'll do is you'll lower his attack to the point where it's relatively easy to deal with, and then you should be able to get the victory. So multiple attack units are top priority here. It's also one of the reasons why I went with USS, because one of the newer units, Vegeta, is great at dishing out a ton of attacks. So felt like this would be Strength Vegeta's wheelhouse, being able to hit the big side of Demon King Piccolo multiple times, and just basically reduce his attack to a very, very, very acceptable point. Attack lowering doesn't actually work, it's just the actual attacks lower his attack, so you can't hit him with attack lowering, it doesn't double up. But if you hit him with multiple attacks, it will help a lot, and with that reduction it becomes far more manageable. Obviously you need a strong team. I've mentioned a couple already, but I think you really need to think about having multiple typings, guard, making sure your team has good synergy, and also using items at the right time. I personally obviously didn't do an item run here. I do think it's possible, of course, but I think ultimately for me, more what I say with that is making sure that you are covering the moments when you're weak and covering the moments when the enemy is really strong. Using items in the beginning of fights when you're going to be attacking the unit, lowering his attack. So use your items at the beginning rather than at the end. Against Demon King Piccolo, make sure that you keep your units strong, use your active skills in the beginning, try to get them out the way really quickly. Just stuff like that. But yeah, overall, pretty good stuff. Honestly, really interesting event, and I'm really looking forward to completing the other ones. But yeah, for now, that's pretty much it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.